Okay, so here's the model that I'm going to use for my double exposure tutorial. And I already know that I want more space to work with, more background. So I'm actually going to go to my crop tool and I'm going to make sure this content aware is clicked. Photoshop is really smart at figuring out the duplication. So it's duplicating your background essentially. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger and move it over. And you see that sort of blob at the top. It's trying really hard to duplicate the background, and it probably picked up some skin color. So it's not a big deal. Don't worry about that right now. Okay, first thing we want to do is cut her out. So we're going to go to the quick selection and gonna cut her out. If you'd rather use the magic wand tool, that's fine, but obviously I like the quick selection. So she's cut out, and then I'm gonna go to my select and mask tool, and I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit. See how the edge right there is a little jaggedy? I'm gonna go ahead and go to my feather, and I'm gonna type in 1, see what happens. It's gonna get nice and smooth. So when you try to type in 5, she gets a little too weird, a little too glowy. So I'd say stick with 1. 1's much better. Depending on the resolution of the photo though, the number might change. You just want it to be a nice smooth line, nothing too crazy. So go ahead and click OK. Okay, so now I'm going to mask her out and click the mask button. Here she is, she's all cut out. And there's like a weird checker background that's normal. So now you're going to think this is crazy, but I'm going to add another layer behind her. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. Yep, go to the bottom, click the little circle tool, click the solid color, and I'm going to click pure white. There's that pure white, and then you're gonna click OK and go ahead and move that down, and then I'll explain later what's gonna happen later. That will make sense later on. I'm gonna click back on the girl and I'm gonna desaturate her. So you're gonna go to Image, Adjustments, Desaturate. So now she's basically a black and white desaturated version. So now you're going to place your landscape version. You're going to go to File and then Place. And then you're going to pick the image that you've chosen for your background. And once you click on that, it should show up. You can, once you place that, maybe change the opacity, obviously to about half, like 50%. And you can kind of see where it hits on her. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to move it around a little bit. You can always stretch it. You can do all kinds of things. Rotate it till you are happy with it. I think that looks pretty cool. It's right underneath her eyes. I think that's kind of a cool effect. If you want to be crazy about it, you could always rotate it and just flip the scene, play around with it a little bit. Don't be afraid. You can do some crazy things with it. So like I said, keep going, figure out what you like. So once you have your landscape where you want it, I put it on its side. You can get artsy with it, anything you want. So now you basically want to duplicate the mask onto your landscape layer. So select your mask, hold Option, click and drag, and then release. It will copy your mask, which is kind of cool, onto the landscape. What's cool is you can actually unclick the chain link there, and you can move it if you need to. You can move it within the mask, which is kind of cool. And obviously without having to move anything. See how it's moving within just the window of her? So it looks pretty neat. It'll just stay within her. You can't even really tell that it's a landscape. Let's see what happens if we move it around some more. If we moved it back, we could do all kinds of things and rotate it again. It might be better this way. So you can try it a couple different ways. So anyways, you can have your landscape in whatever direction you want. Now I'm going to make another copy of my model. So Command J, copy of her, and now I'm going to drag on top of my landscape. Now I'm going to play with some blending modes after this. Right now it's on normal. Blending modes do all kinds of different things. Best way to figure out what they do is play with them. Let's see what darken does. Let's see what multiply does. Let's just see what all of them do. You can play around with it. I think some of you guys have already experienced what these do in your last project. So it's just kind of a matter of going through, figuring out what does what. Another thing that's fun is you can kind of see what overlay does. Color burn is kind of cool. Multiply, obviously all that. Maybe you don't want it to be quite so intense. You can lower the opacity, play around with that. I think the landscape layer is only at 50%. So if I click on that, what happens when we bring it back up? Just kind of depends. Play around with it, figure out the different settings. You can play around with all of those different combinations. Blending mode of the top model is the color burn, I believe. What happens when you click on the landscape? Let's see what it says on darken. Okay, so we're kind of seeing all kinds of different effects here. Looks pretty crazy. But you have multiple layers, multiple masks, a copy of that last one. So you can see all kinds of different things with each of those. You get the point. Okay, that's back on normal. Okay, so that's basically what you can see it doing. All right, that's looking pretty good. Maybe I want, I'm not sure at this point. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop it for here, and you can see part 2 in just a second.